Hello, 40 Waters. Longtime listeners of the show will know that I'm a big believer in education, especially music education, and I'm excited to announce that this episode is brought to you by TrueFire. I've partnered with TrueFire to bring you an opportunity to get into their lessons at an affordable rate in a way that's going to help you, help the podcast, and get you playing more guitar. I'm excited to say that you can use the code 40WATT, 40WATT, at checkout to get 40% off your first or next purchase through TrueFire. That includes their All Access Pass to have access to all of their lessons and videos and jams. I highly recommend it. I use it myself. I'm a huge fan. I truly believe in TrueFire's motto of live, practice, and play. Please use the link below to get started, and happy learning. This episode is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. There's a wonderful crew of people over on Patreon giving money every month to make sure that this show and this podcast happen and cut my overhead costs so that I can keep doing it. I can't express my thanks enough for their support and their belief in what we're doing over here. And if you'd like to join them and help support this podcast, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/40watt podcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can support this show. And actually, now that we are starting to get sponsors for the episode, my $3 supporters will get the episodes ad-free. If you want to support at a $5 level, you'll get ad-free episodes and you will get additional content every week. I thank all of you that have given money to help keep this going, and I thank all of you that are going to become supporters and help make sure this show keeps happening. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome 40 Watt Podcast episode. I don't know anymore. It'll be in the description. You know what it is. There's you lose count at some point. That's the nature of it. So super excited. Y'all have already heard the same thing every week. Patreon supporters, thank you so much for your support. You make this show possible. You get the extra content. You get the episode ad-free. Not that there's a ton of ads yet. Just a couple of sponsor shot spots at the beginning, but there are some talks happening, and there's some active looking for sponsors. If anybody is a gear company and is interested in a sponsorship spot on the podcast, I've got some spots available. We can talk and work something out. If you're interested in supporting the show, go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast, where for as little as $3 a month, you can support the show, get the show ad free. For $5 a month, you get the show ad free and you get extra content. At $10, I give you an extra special shout out at the end of the episodes. And if you want, you can go all the way up to $50. And at that point, we will have lessons. I'll teach you theory, guitar, bass, keys, whatever you want to learn. We can just talk for an hour. It doesn't matter to me. It's your time at that point. So, all right, we're through with that. This week, I'm super excited because we've been talking about doing this episode for a while.
Yeah.
And I've got Brady from Goldman Guitars. We talked about it for a while. We were going to do it, and some things happened that we're going to talk about here in a minute. I don't want to spoil it too much because I'm going to bring that up. We've got to talk about that because that's wild. But then you moved, you've had a kid, like you've been busy, dude.
We haven't had a kid yet. Kid is coming.
Oh, that's right. You're having a kid. That's coming.
Yeah, he's due on Christmas this year. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, what a Christmas.
Yeah.
What a poor kid. As someone with a December birthday, poor kid.
Because being our first kid, we're hoping he's a little bit late, so maybe he'll get here around New Year's. We don't know, but we're excited to have him either way.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. So, Brady, let's back up. How'd you get into playing guitar? How'd that translate into you making guitars? How'd you get from, that first, hey, the guitar's kind of cool, to where you are today?
Oh man, short and sweet. So it was
No. Short and sweet doesn't work for podcasting. Give the long version.
All right. I was born in 1992. No. Honestly, for me, I fell in love with the guitar when I was 5. My kindergarten music teacher was an old hippie, and he would just sit on the floor and play tunes for us on his acoustic guitar. And he would put records on, and we would listen to the Beatles, Pink Floyd, The Wall. I remember hearing "Wish You Were Here" when I was 5, stuff like that. So that early on, I didn't really realize it at the time. Obviously, I was 5. But that translates to today because I'm still a huge Pink Floyd guy and all that. But But yeah, so I was in middle school. I was on summer break between eighth grade and freshman year, and we went to a Chris Daughtry concert at the state fair. Yeah, glorious, glorious. But
Yeah.
first concert, that
I mean,
that
no
whole
hate, no
thing.
hate on Chris. No hate on Chris.
No,
It's not
no,
my
no, no.
genre. It's not my style, but
Me either anymore. But hey. So
yeah.
I just enjoyed the vibe and watching people have fun on stage and that energy. And so I went out, bought a guitar like the next week. It was a Strat. It came in a cardboard box with an amp and all this junk.
Oh
And
yeah.
I in middle school I had a couple of classes, so I knew like a D chord and E chord and like a D or a G, and I would just hit those with as much overdrive as I could crank that little amp up to, and just lay on the whammy bar. Drove my parents mad probably,
Of course it did.
um, but I
Because those
stuck with.
those strats weren't great, so you're laying on the whammy bar and it's coming out of tune the whole time. So it's
Oh
like,
yeah, and I didn't even have a tuner, so whatever it was left in was what it
oh
stayed in.
no.
Yeah, yeah, it was bad. It just sounded like a dying cat coming from my bedroom the whole time, probably. But so I stuck with that long enough. They're like, all right, he seems serious enough. They got me lessons. Eventually, I had three like teachers at once, and my most recent teacher, I haven't done lessons in a long time, but he made the biggest impact on my playing and introduced me to Jimi Hendrix and all these classic guys. He also had one hell of a guitar collection. He had a
Oh
54
yeah.
Strat, serial number 007. Um,
What?
Jimi Hendrix actually played that one because he was friends with Jimi Hendrix. He had an extensive career in his own right. So
God,
I've
that's
played a
wild.
Strat that Hendrix played. He has a 54 Les Paul and he had a No-Caster. Those are like his three main guitars. And I think it was a 46 Martin D28. So I'm just a
Whew.
punk in high school getting to play these super valuable sought after guitars. And it kind of built from there. I started working on them. I went to a small school and they didn't have much elective choices. So my only choice was wood shop my sophomore year. And I get in the class, the teacher's like, what do you want to build? Like most kids when they come into wood shop have a project in mind. And I don't know, I like guitar. It's like, and he goes on, he's like, well, they're made out of wood. I don't know how to make them, but I can help you. And so I bought a pawn shop like Dean single cutaway dual humbucker guitar, tore it all apart, modified the hell out of it, made new parts, all that stuff. And by the end of my senior year, when I graduated, I had one guitar done, and I almost had a second one done.
Wow.
Yeah, I had my
Yeah,
first order for a.
that's pretty
Sorry, go ahead.
early for getting in building guitars. Like that's
Yeah,
I've talked to a good chunk of builders at this point. That's pretty early. That like by high school you were building your second guitar. By you finishing
yeah,
high school, did you
yeah,
have trouble with like? Because okay, as someone who's not building, we'll pick this back up at 18, graduating high school. That's our note. That's our bookmark. I'm dog earing this page. Um, so when you first started building this, because this seems like the hardest part for me in my mind. Body fine, most of the neck fine. You get to the fretboard, like that's where it becomes this whole other level of precision. Uh, not just in there's the finishing of frets, there's the crowning process. I've only recently learned that, oh, some folks like this crown, and oh, you can crown this way. And I was like, I just thought of they're rounded. I didn't
yeah,
think anything about that. Oh, you could crown frets differently and change something about the instrument. But like there's so much precision in that, and then just where the frets are is a big deal. And
yeah,
there's StuMac. You can get these rulers and these guides, and there's so much that you can get. But I don't know how much of that existed in let's see, born in 92, 2010 ish, high school
yeah,
graduation.
yeah. I graduated in
Um,
2011, but I started
yeah,
and had that guitar done in 2010.
yeah. So StuMac may have had the tools too, but I don't know how much access a 17, 18-year-old kid making guitars has access to them. You know what I mean? Did you have
Yeah,
trouble with getting that figured out?
no. So I've always I've always had a business mindset. Like when I was a kid, I would sell my old toys to my brother for 3 times what I paid for them to go buy new toys. um,
That's awesome.
yeah. One a quick side story. When we were younger, we were getting to the age to where like Easter wasn't cool anymore, right? But my mom was like,
Right.
"Do you guys want to do an Easter egg hunt?" And my brother, he started to say, "Yeah, let's do it," because he like getting the money in the egg. And I was like, hold on. Why don't we just tell her that we want the money from the egg, but she should just give it to us because then she doesn't have to hide the eggs, which she doesn't want to do. So we had 2 years of what we called the Easter tax. um, but yeah, so I convinced my parents like I want to do this 100%. That's that's something that is kind of always been me. When I know what I want to do, there's not really any stopping me. It's just I'm going for it with everything I have.
Right.
And I was like, I don't care how many birthdays and Christmases for the next however many years, but I need money to buy parts and tools to get this guitar done. And they did it, which was really nice. They actually
That's
have that
amazing.
guitar now as a gift for shortly before we moved.
That's very, very cool. Okay, so high school, you graduate, you've built one, you're working on a second one at this point. Uh, did you always know that like you wanted to do this as a business? Like you wanted to build guitars for a living? Like at that point, let's say you finished the first one, you were like, oh damn, that was fun. I want to keep doing this, and oh, I could make a business out of this.
It was probably, I would say, 3 guitars in. So the first one I made just
Okay.
because I couldn't afford a Les Paul, and I realized that it was cheaper to make one. So that's the only copy I've
Hmm.
ever made. Was my first guitar was a Les Paul copy,
Okay.
and then after that, I had that second one started. That one was a gift from my guitar teacher Gary. He's the one with the vintage collection. He still has and plays that guitar. And after
Oh,
that,
that's rad.
people started to see my stuff online, whatever else, and I actually got an order basically right away. So my third, I think it was my third or fourth build was already a custom order for a guy, and I'm like this
Oh, that's
19-year-old punk. But so I got that guitar done, gave me some money to put together a small shop. At the time, I was working out of my girlfriend's mom's garage, and I just had this like little 4x2 table and a bandsaw and any hand tool that I could take out onto the deck. So like I was hand sawing with a handsaw, guitar tops and F holes and stuff like that on just a little
wow.
fold out card deck style table thing, just outside. Like any means possible, I was gonna make it happen.
Yeah. And so during this time you're living in where
At
were you at that time?
that time, I was living at home still.
Okay.
Um,
Where's home for you? Where's
I grew up in Oregon, in a small town called
Okay.
Albany. Yeah,
Gotcha. I was trying to picture weather because finishing outside,
yeah,
like I've done a little bit of refinishing of guitars, and I did a drum kit once, and it's just tinkering and learning to do things, right?
right, yeah.
We had this crappy drum kit, and actually I've refinished 2 drum kits at this point. One was better results than the first, obviously, but I live in Mississippi where the humidity is so rough
Yeah.
that refinishing outside, because I didn't have a spray booth or anything like that. I've
Mhm.
got literally with the drums. I took for the drums, I took metal. Um, it's just cabling. It's essentially it's like a braided metal cable, right?
Mhm.
And thin one, and I ran it between 2 trees, and I hung the drums there from that cable so that I'd have somewhere to hang them while they dry and did their thing,
Right.
right? Hung guitars from that line and everything. But yeah, it took forever for anything to cure, for
Yep.
anything to not be a complete and utter sticky mess. And there were a lot of complete and utter sticky messes trying to do this. So I wasn't good at it.
Mhm.
But I was trying to figure out. I knew you were West Coast ish somewhere.
Yeah.
Like California's weather seems like it'd be a little more conducive to if you've got to do it
Yeah.
outside than say maybe the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. So Oregon, if you haven't been, it's super wet. It rains a good 8, 9 months out of the
Yeah.
year. And I was
Mm.
19, and so for me, my solution was, okay, well, I have to finish these in my bedroom, and so I looked up, okay, what kind of finish can I use in my bedroom that doesn't stink up the house? You can't use lacquer, right? You can't spray lacquer in the house.
Right.
Your parents would kill you. And so I convinced my mom to go to the liquor store and buy Everclear for me because I couldn't. I was 19,
Yeah.
and I used that to then make my own shellac, and I would do like a French polish on the floor in my bedroom, just on like a towel. So
That's wild.
my bedroom smelled like sawdust and a bar, basically.
Which, by the way, everyone, all of us who have gone through the pandemic, we've become very familiar with the smell of Everclear because all of when the world ran out of hand sanitizer, all the distilleries started making hand sanitizer, and we still have some at work. We have like 3 more full gallon jugs, and it smells like straight corn liquor.
Oh,
It's awful every time we have to open it. It's so
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
So,
It's pretty
all right. So
vile.
you're French polishing guitars on the floor of your bedroom at 19.
Yeah.
So when did so ha- did you always? It was always Goldman guitars. That's always been like the way it was going, or did you like still? It took a little while to develop into the business because that's the part I'm interested in. It's like, how did you decide? Like, I'm going to do this.
To be honest, I
Like,
didn't
because you're
really.
doing it now.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of had it forced on me because originally it was purely
Huh?
out of selfish greed to make guitars for myself that I couldn't buy.
Sure.
Um, I like to experiment with different stuff. That's why my guitars are. I don't copy other people because I want to do my own thing and try things that haven't been tried. And so originally it just started out as selfish, and I just kind of I'd keep most guitars I made, and if I needed money for whatever, or if somebody like a buddy is like, hey, can you make me one? It's like, sure, cover the cost. I enjoy doing it. At least my time is getting covered, so I'll make you something. And that kind of went on long enough. It's like, all right, I need to make this a business. And up till then, I just was signing my name onto the headstock. But when I became a business for the first time, it was Dreamland Guitars. And under that name, I sold,
Okay.
I think, 10 or 15 guitars. And then, as your first business always does, because you have no experience, didn't go so well. So I quit doing
Sure.
that, took a break for a bit, and was kind of deciding on if I wanted to do it as a career thing or just a hobby. And I had people blowing up my Instagram like, I want to buy one, I want to buy one, I want to buy one. And so I was like, all right, let's get into it again. And my name is now on the headstock, so I went back to just using my name, and it's been going
Yeah.
well.
That's awesome. So to caveat a little off of there, so you're not in Oregon anymore. You've moved,
Yep.
and you're still setting up your shop. I know last we talked. I
Yeah.
don't know how close you are to being back up to full operation and building, but you also wind your own pickups, which is such a cool. It's
Yeah.
like this cool extra thing people can do. I
Yeah.
like when
Yeah.
builders make their own pickups. There's something cool about it.
Yeah. And if you're, I
So
don't
when
know,
did that get started?
oh man, I started that when I had the Dreamland business. So I mean, that's
Uh
been
huh.
at least 8 years or so. Um, I just wanted more control over my build. I was kind of tired of using, standard whatever, just aftermarket pickups. It's like, I want to give this a shot. And so, me being me, I bought a pickup winder, all the stuff I needed to do it, and I wasted a ton of wire just experimenting and trying things and failing and throwing pickups against the wall because they didn't work until I finally figured it out. And then it's like, all right, well, let's start tweaking this, let's tweak that. And what's funny is the first successful pickup I made was actually, I later found out, was Lindy Freyland's first experimental design that led to his split style single coil Strat pickup.
Really?
Yeah, because what I did was I basically split the bobbin down the middle, and I wound
Uh huh.
3 poles and 3 poles, and it was hum canceling. If you hit a chord, it sounded great, but the problem with that is when you bend the G string up, it dies because you've got north and south, and so it cancels out in the
Right.
middle. And so I was like, well, that was a cool concept, but it didn't work. But I learned a lot from it and was able to implement that in other ways. And that's why on Lindy's pickups,
Yeah.
they've got that little thing in the middle, because that transfers that magnetic energy across the dead space in the center.
I did not know any of that. That's fascinating. Okay, I wondered how he pulled that off, but that makes a ton of sense now. So it's not a humbucker because not every pole piece has its own counterpart to cancel the hum, but it's just the pickup itself is split
Yeah.
to. That's wild. Okay. Now I need to look more into that. I love the idea of winding pickups and winding my own pickups, and there's a part of there's a part of me that really just I've talked to several people on the podcast that wind their own pickups, that do their thing. Zach over at Mythos has started winding pickups, although he wound them, came up with what he liked, and then was like, "Hey, Porter pickups, can you make these?" It's like
Yeah.
he realized very quickly. He was like, "I'm not going to have time to do this." Or
Right.
like Eric Daw over at Pinup Custom Guitars makes his own pickups. It feels so cool, and it's like that's something I feel like I could do as far as like the space I have, like because winding pickups doesn't take up as much space as say building a guitar shop.
Right.
Like you need, I don't have all that equipment. Like literally, I have two saws. I have a skill saw and a rotary saw, and I just use rotary for everything. It's
Right.
it's less like a carpenter, more like a lumberjack. Whenever I have to work on any woodworking project, but being able to decide, I'm not going to do the thing that everybody else is doing, and this is no shade. You're not doing I'm going to put Fralins, or I'm going to put Lawlers, or I'm going to put, throwbacks. What's the pickup du jour? There's been a few different ones over the years that have come over. You're like, no, I want to make this be 100%. This is me creating this vision.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've always been an artist, and so that's kind of how I approach it. Is I want it to be 100% me. And the other thing too is like the guitar industry is a very, very strange industry compared to other industries.
Yes.
And so I was looking at, doing the research and looking at other guitar companies, that how they've done and all that. And it kind of, the trend that I saw was the ones that looked to the past and just tried to recreate the same thing over and over again and try to find the magic again. They didn't do so well. And it was the companies that actually were trying to push the envelope and make new stuff. They didn't catch on right away, but they lasted longer and had more success in the end.
Yeah, so, there's lots of companies that have come along. Like I'm going to name some names here. If any of the folks at these companies are listening, I'm not throwing shade. I'm just stating some things. But like I remember when Nash guitars were like the thing. Everybody wanted it was like, oh, it's it's a better made Fender, and now I don't hear anybody talk about Nash guitars.
No.
Whereas you look at someone like Anderson, or you look at Sir, or you look at those where they were like, we're inspired by these designs. I mean, John Sir at one time was a master builder at, well, I don't know if they were using the term master builder at the time, but he was, in the head of the custom shop at Fender. Now he's building what are ostensibly S&T style guitars, but they've pushed the envelope. They've changed them. They're not that. The person who wants a vintage Strat is not going to go to Sir. They're going to go to Fender or someone like that. But if you want a Strat, but dialed in, like for a modern player, and I'm not endorsing Sir over Nash over Fender, I'm saying it's a very different player. I'm not a Sir player. I know I'm not. But there are some really amazing guitars coming out of Sir and some amazing players. But yeah, I feel like Sir, Anderson feels like they've sort of faded off, and I don't know what happened there. But yeah, it's those companies. Another one that I talk about a bunch on the podcast, Novo, Dennis Fano over at Novo. Like his guitars have some inspiration there. You can see it.
Yeah.
But they're very much their own thing.
Right.
Like nothing else looks like a Novo.
Right. And he's capitalizing on the worn in trend that's huge right now.
Yes.
Because
and you kind of I've always loved relic guitars, so that's just me.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of touched on it too. Like early on, I was seen more as less of a brand and more of a custom builder. So I'd get people all the time, can you
Right.
make me a Strat? Can you make me a Tele, this or that? And it's like, sure I can, but artistically, I don't really enjoy that. And you could just go to any
Yeah.
store and find that. So it's like, I don't want to offer that product. I want to offer a different product. I
Yeah.
try to, when
It's sort of like,
people,
why would you have me make this thing that 700 other people already make?
yeah, well, that, and also like, it's kind of like going to Apple and saying, hey, can you make me a Samsung Galaxy? It's, when you're trying,
Yes.
when you're trying to develop a brand, that doesn't really work. And, the custom thing is
Right.
only, it's, I feel like it's limited in scale. Whereas if you can make your own product and then produce it at a high enough level that you can actually grow and make it a something you don't do in your mom's house when you're a 17 or 18-year-old kid.
Right. So now you've moved. You're in Texas. We won't tell people where. Undisclosed location. Um, uh, climate's a little drier. Um,
Yeah.
just a little. So, uh, you're getting ready to have your shop reopen there. Do you have a date on when you're going to be back making sawdust?
No, not on that. I'm ready to take pickup orders now though. That's all set up and ready to go. The
That's
guitars will be
awesome.
a little bit. It's all my tools are in storage in Oregon still, so once I get some
Gotcha.
cash flow going from selling pickups, I can ship that stuff over here and get that all kind of set up. But between that and having a kid coming this December, I hope to get it done before the end of the year. At least get it over here. But uh,
Yeah.
but
No,
we'll
that'd
see.
be rad because I've looked at a lot of your designs. Some of them are not up my alley. I tell every builder this if it's the truth, but some of them
Mhm.
are incredibly up my alley. You make something for a lot of different players, and I know you're still just like any new-ish guitar company. You're still defining, what's ultimately going to be the line. Because you look at
Right.
any guitar company, they go through a few different models and things before they find, oh well, this is where I'm honing in. This is what we build and this is
Right.
this is what really is us,
Yeah.
which can also be it can be heartbreaking. I always think of the story of something like this, like you're gonna find that thing that customers come to you for, and my only like hope is that it's one of the things you love building the most, you know what I mean? Because
Right.
if you get I, I joke about it for artists. I used to hear the stories about Dave Matthews and how much he hates the song "What Would You Say." He said because they got so burned out on it, and of
Yeah.
course he was able to grow past it. Not every band gets to get past their massive hit that everyone wants to hear, and they just hate that song at that point.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the Spin Doctors still like Little Miss Can't Be Wrong.
Yeah.
But so it's cool to see that though, and but so we're gonna sidetrack. So I really started paying attention to your brand, and I really hate that this is when I started paying attention. But building guitars is dangerous, y'all. And so,
Yeah. They fight
um,
back. They
if
fight back.
yeah, they fight back. So let's tell that story because man, what a harrowing tale.
Yeah. So it for me, like the last couple of years of my business really ramped up, especially during the pandemic. I found myself
Yeah,
without a day job because of COVID and all that stuff. And I was like, well, I've got a shop set up. I'm just going to pump out guitars. And thankfully, people were really supportive and were buying my stuff. And that went up pretty much up until our move, close to of having solid orders coming in. And I was
yeah,
working on a piece of maple burl for the wood nerds out there. That is, it's like a growth, grows on the side of the tree. And they're very hard to cut because they're not square, they're not flat. You have to know what you're doing. And I was cutting guitar tops. And I ran it through the saw, cut my first, what would be my first half of a book match pair. No problem. I was like, all right, next. We go to run it through again, and the saw blade on my bandsaw catches a knot in the wood. And because of the shape of it, it the saw blade forces the wood down towards the table, and the back end of the piece uppercuts my jaw really hard.
ooh. I had a chill run down my spine as you were getting ready to say it. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. So I get hit. I have a dust mask and all this stuff on, and my shop is out in the garage at our old place. So my wife, she's in the kitchen, and from her perspective, she heard a thud and nothing. And she knows, like, if I make a mistake, I'll get mad and cuss or something. Oh, he's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
But the silence, she was like, something's not right. So she comes out. I
Oh,
don't even see her for a little bit because I get hit. I'm like, oh man, that hurt. Turn this off, and I'm just holding my jaw, and I can feel a bone in my mouth, and I feel things moving.
oh,
And
mm.
yeah, and so I'm just kind of standing there holding my jaw, and I look up, and she's there, and I take off my headphones and glasses, all this gear, and she's like, "Are you all right?" I was like, "No, I broke my jaw." And she's, "Are you sure?" Mm-hmm. So we go in. She freaks out. I'm super chill, so I'm even calm in the moment. It was like taking an uppercut from Mike Tyson. Like
Right.
I
Yeah.
got I got wallets pretty good. So we go in. She's like, come on, let's get to the hospital. I'm like, just give me a second to collect myself before we hop in the car. I go to the sink. I rinse out my mouth, and a bunch of blood and a broken tooth comes out. She really
Oh,
freaks at that point. It's like, all right, let's go. And what ended up happening was I had a solid break here, and on that break is where the tooth broke. And then I had a crack that came down and across.
oh, God.
So
That
that,
that's so.
yeah,
I've broken a bunch of bones. I've broken a bunch of bones in various ways. Shattered ankle that actually ended any hopes of playing college football for me.
mm,
I would have sat the bench. I wasn't amazing. I know this about myself, um, but it was one of those things where it's like you told that story, and like I've had my nose broken in a fight because I like to fight as a teenager. Apparently, um, yeah, that whole jaw thing. There's something about it just sends a chill down my back because
yeah.
suddenly the healing process for that is not fun.
No, well, and what was worse was that I had just left my job because we were getting ready for this move, and I had no
Right?
insurance set aside or anything because
Oh,
nothing's going to happen between now and then, right? No insurance, so we have
right.
to cover all this stuff. We get the X-rays. They give me a couple of pain pills, and they say go home, and we'll contact you. The hospital they told us or referred us to, this happened February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. So my poor wife.
Oh,
Yeah. Um, so they refer us to this other hospital, and I call them, and they're like, "Yeah, we can't get you in to do surgery until June 15th," and we're in February. I was like,
yeah.
so at that point, you're looking at it healing wrong, and then they have to re-break it. It's a
Yep.
much more extensive surgery, all this stuff. And I was like 2.5 weeks in living with a broken jaw. Um, when I laid on my side at night, if I laid on my right side, the bone would move in and like touch the underside of my tongue.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a fun
oh,
time. A lot of rice and soft food during that.
yeah.
We were fortunate enough to find a surgeon after a couple of weeks, and then now you're wired shut. They actually put wire through the gums, wrap it around the teeth, and tie everything together so you can't open your jaw. So that was like another 9 weeks of that, drinking food through a straw. Like
Oh no.
rough way to
How
live.
much weight did you lose? How much weight did you lose?
About 30 pounds.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine in high school that I played football with who broke his jaw in junior high. Um, and they had to wire his jaw shut, and he went from like 260 to 215.
Wow. Yeah.
It was like massive weight loss.
Yeah. I don't think I've
Because you
had
can't
soup
eat. I
since.
mean,
No.
I don't blame you. I'd be so
Yeah.
sick of soup,
Yeah.
and I love soup, so that would be awful.
Yeah. No, I mean, soup was okay before, but it's really not okay now.
Yeah, no kidding. God.
Yeah.
So that heals. That you go through that. And we talked during this process. Actually, when we started talking and chatting on Instagram. By the way, the listeners, if you want to get a hold of me, Instagram's a great way to do it. I answer those messages pretty much every time. Um, I say I can still do that. If it gets too busy, I won't be able to do that as much. But um, that's and there's the physical getting over that, but there's like a whole mental thing too. Like
Yeah,
that hits your emotional and mental health hard because
yeah,
suddenly you are completely sidelined.
completely.
Um,
Yeah, completely.
how bad was the pain for how long? I'm so curious.
The physical pain wasn't that bad. So it was a good 3 days, like right after it happened, where I was pretty sore. I didn't do too much. Um,
Hmm.
but then I kind of got in trouble a little bit because I was out there with a broken job back at building guitars before the surgery. My wife comes out. She's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, um, I was just like, I don't know, but yeah, I've been through a lot of stuff, and so I was like, all right, this is just the next thing to make the mental toughness, that much more there.
Yeah,
But yeah, once everything was wired shut, that didn't hurt. The bone didn't hurt or anything. What actually
yeah,
hurt the most was like you don't realize like we've got a dog, and so I was out throwing the ball for the dog, and you don't realize like how much the rest of your body is connected to your face in a weird way. So like I
right.
threw the ball and like your mouth wants to open, and because it's wired shut, it really hurts the joint. And so just
Oh, wow.
weird stuff like that you don't really think about until you've been through it.
That's so wild because like I said, I've broken a lot of bones, but been on crutches, had a sling for my collarbone, those kinds of things, but I was still able to pretty much function. Like
Yeah.
you don't realize how much. I mean, I guess you do. Most people do, but still, you got to think about it. Your face is tied to everything you do,
Yeah.
literally everything.
Yeah.
Social, physical. I can't imagine. So it's wild though that you got back to building guitars. Like you were like, no. Did you have any like apprehension with the bandsaw, or did you and the bandsaw have any words afterwards? Like you're like, all right, now you and I we've been
No.
through this now.
No. 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 I haven't really had too many shop injuries. I've had some minor ones. That's the worst one I've had. But it just happens. It's like, all right, well
Yeah,
let's learn how to prevent that next time, and you got to get back on the horse, so to say. You can't let it knock you down.
yeah, no kidding. And you hear about injuries in shops, and anyone who works with power tools for long enough, eventually
Yeah,
there's an injury of some kind, right?
yeah, and I've seen some
One of
bad
one of
ones.
the best bassists I know, lost his left pinky in a machining accident.
Ooh.
Uh, Luckily, he says he's fine. He doesn't need it. He's never needed. He hasn't had it most of his life, and he's an incredible bassist. But yeah, I'm lucky. I haven't done as much. Uh, I work with power tools fairly regularly, but like so far, no major injuries. You
Yeah.
cut a finger on a saw blade or something like that every now and again, but nothing like taking a maple burl to the face. Um,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like I said, I've been fortunate. I haven't had too many bad ones. The next one after that, like I nearly cut the tip of my thumb off with a chisel. That one was pretty bad.
ooh,
Um, that one went straight through the nail bed and everything. Had to get several stitches, and that was fun. I actually don't have feeling in
gosh,
it still, but I've got a thumb. We're good.
yeah, yeah. I this isn't from working in a shop, but my right wrist. Um, and this is we're just sharing war stories at this point. I was a teenager. I don't know, must have been 16 or 17, and stupid because you are when you're 16 or 17. I don't
Confirmed.
look parents out there, or if we've got my demographics aren't very high for teenagers, but if you're a teenager out there, you're stupid. You just are. Your brain makes bad decisions. It just does. I don't care how smart you are. Like there are teenagers that have graduated high school and some of them college by the time they're 16. The super brilliant. No, you too. I'm including you all in there because you make bad life decisions, and I did. And the one I made was um I was I was ticked about something. Don't even know what it was. My mom asked me to take the garbage out, and I just did not want to. So I walked over and did that thing where you just compress the garbage in the garbage can
Mm.
and just push it down so you can fit more stuff in there. There's shards of a broken glass in there, And
Oh.
so when I reached down and pushed the garbage down, the shard of glass came up and went into my wrist,
Mm.
um, and severed muscle, nerve, all that. Missed the artery, thank goodness.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I just grabbed my wrist and told my mom very calmly, again, like you, it's like, we need to go to the hospital.
Yep.
She said, okay. I said, just give me a second. I went to clean it a little bit, right? And I got it cleaned off. I looked at it and I could flex my hand and see the bone and tendons in the wrist.
Oh
Like, yeah,
yeah.
we're going to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
So to this day, I don't have feeling, basically ring finger over on my right hand.
Oh
It's
wow.
numb
Hmm.
to this day.
So chicken picking's kind of hard.
Yeah, I've just, yeah, I can't. Well,
Yeah.
also just, I don't have the nails for it, but yeah,
Mm.
it's odd. I've learned to live with it. Like, I almost don't notice it anymore
Right.
until like right now. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh no, yeah, it's still numb. It's still,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
still don't
Yeah.
really feel it.
Mhm.
Wild times.
Yeah.
So back to building guitars though. You're back. You're building. Um. So you're still got to get your tools down. So looking at
Yeah.
next year, probably building guitars again. Back to
Yeah.
shop
Probably.
operations.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a while to set up a shop that's efficient enough to get guitars done in a timely manner. So it'll probably be early next year. Is kind of my goal.
Okay,
And that gives us a
I
couple of
got you.
months once our son is here to get in the swing of that and everything else too. But like I
Yeah,
said,
get a
pickup
routine
orders.
going.
Yeah, but in the meantime, I'm just gonna hammer out pickups and I might do pre-wired
Yeah, so
pick
let's.
guards, stuff like that.
Ooh, that's a good route to go because I know that also. I know a lot of folks are doing, Gun Street's a big one. The wiring kits, the rewire
Yeah,
kits, where that's I think that's a great route for anyone who makes pickups or makes any. If they're already in that field doing that kind of thing. That
right.
pre-wired stuff is amazing. I rewired a Les Paul I used to have, and it was so great to have. Oh, let's disconnect the pickups, let's disconnect the output jack, and just drop this in. And I have
Yeah,
like 4 things to solder instead of 20.
right. Yeah,
It super simple.
yeah. And a lot of
So,
people right
but
now.
going down the pickup route.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry, latency got me there.
it's
Let's
all
let's
good.
go the pickup route real quick though. So, what do you already make? What pickups are you making right now?
Right now I have a single coil set. Again, they're all my own creations for the most part. They're not exactly quote unquote
Mm-hmm.
standard. I have a single coil set called the dual tone single coil, and that is a single coil pickup that has two different sounds to it with no wiring change. Um,
Oh wow.
yeah, so basically all you have to do if you want a different sound is you just switch it around in the pick guard and you've got a different tone. It's not like something that you could put on a switch and A, B, both tones. But if you
Right.
restring, you can pop the pick guard off, switch it. Um, I have a PAF set. I have a P90 set. I just released a Nexus humbucker is what I call it. It's kind of like a PAF Filtertron hybrid. I do Filtertrons as well.
Oh, cool.
I have Tele sets coming, Jazzmaster sets coming, but they're not on the website yet. I've got a lot of stuff that's soon to be released, but I just don't have pictures for it yet, so it's hard to post it onto the website.
Yeah, exactly. And especially with things like, telly, you probably want to wind a couple of sets before you like post it and like, yeah, like, okay, this is what I want. But
Yeah, well, with
especially
Tele
telly
sets,
bridge pickups, people get crazy.
they do.
People get
Yeah,
wild about telly bridge pickups.
I've wound several of them for guitars in the
Oh,
past or for customers. I've wound bass pickups. They're just I haven't made them available on the site yet, is all.
I
But
got you.
I've
Well,
made
that's
a
awesome.
pretty wide variety at this point.
Very cool. Because pickups are one of those things that I got when I first started in buying and selling and trading guitars, and it went. I didn't play guitar for long before I got into it. um, Pickup swaps. That was the thing I got really, really into. I was on the
Hmm.
Seymour Duncan forum back in the day. I'm still
Yep.
technically over there, but it man, and that's where I started to really get into like crazy technology. People are like, "Oh, well, this pickup. Hey, I've got these, Alnico 4 magnets. If you want to swap them out for your pickup," and like people do magnet swaps. They would do bobbin swaps between humbuckers. Like it
Hmm.
like got wild, the things people
Yeah.
were willing to do to change pickups. I'm not gonna lie. Nowadays I'm more of a, does it sound good as it is? Okay, I'm probably not gonna change anything. Like
Yeah.
the idea of resoldering another set of pickups into a guitar. Uh, I
Yeah.
I have a LaRose that I actually showed you before we started playing, and the guy who had it before me had swapped out the pickups. He had put in a set of Brandon Wounds, and it came with the Lawlers, and he included the Lawlers. So I played it for a little while with the Brandon Wounds, and I swapped out the Lawlers, and for what it's worth, y'all, they were both great. I didn't have any problems really with either one. Um, I ended up keeping the Lawlers in there for one reason. That's what the guitar came with, and two, they sounded great, and I didn't feel the need to go back to the Brandon Wounds. And three, the idea of resoldering those pickups into that semi-hollow guitar, I did not want to go through that again because it was awful. I
Yeah.
never want to do it again. But
Yeah. I'm glad you
pickup
mentioned that
swapping is
because
a great way. No, go ahead.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because it's something that I haven't released yet, but I'm working on. Is eventually all of my pickups will have a quick connect option because
Oh
not
my gosh,
everybody,
yes,
not everybody has a soldering iron or is very good with one if they have one and they don't want to pay for a tech. Maybe they live in a small town like I did and there are no techs, so you just have to do it
right.
yourself. That kind of thing. And so eventually all of my pickups will have a quick connect option. So that way, if you swap pickups a lot, whatever, you can just plug and play. You don't have to deal with a soldering iron. And I'm thinking about doing that with
That
wiring harnesses for pre-wired pick guards as well. Like if you've got a Strat, for example, you could just pop the whole pick guard off with one connector, unplug it, put a whole different pick guard on, plug it in, done, and restring.
we have advanced so much in technology since the 1950s.
Yeah,
Why, this is my thing, like, why are we still doing it this way when other ways are available to us? I know
yeah,
why, because traditionalists get bent out of shape when you change things. But I think it's Radio Shop pickups out of the UK. They do some quick connect
hmm,
situations. I think they've got little, oh, I don't know the term for it, but it's basically a um little plastic with screws on the side of it that
yep,
they solder to the pot or to the output jack or whatever, and you put the cable in, you screw it down, tighten it down, you're connected, you're done, that's it.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
not quite as simple as the plug, but why do we have to make this so hard? Why do
You
I
know,
have to have a soldering iron? I have a like really nice soldering iron. I finally got tired of the little Radio Shack pencil soldering iron I'd been using forever that did
yeah,
not get hot enough. Let's be honest,
right.
not even close. Um, yeah, I finally got a good one because I have to do this so often as a guitarist. Why do I have to learn how to solder to play guitar?
Yeah, yeah, and that's again that's a weirdness of the guitar industry because it really hasn't changed in 70 years, right? It's you're
Right?
getting different versions that are all very inspired by the original thing, but they're still very derivative and nearly, or in most cases, copies of the same things that we've had for a long time. And nothing
Yeah,
against that. I love a lot of those vintage guitars, but yeah, we have the technology now to make some improvements and at the very least make life a little bit easier when it comes to swapping parts out.
exactly. It should not be rocket surgery for me to swap out pickups in a guitar. It
Yeah.
and yet it is. It's horrible, and therefore I hate doing it anymore. When I
Mhm.
was younger, I guess I really enjoyed it because anything to do with a guitar. Now I'm like, anything that takes me away from playing the instrument, I don't want to do it. Like I've gotten older,
Right.
and like I just want to play them. I just want to play them. That's all I
Yeah.
want to do. I don't want to fix them. I don't want to rebuild a pedal board. I don't want to. I don't want to do these things. I have uh, to at this point. Don't get me wrong. I've got a bunch of pedals, but it's like those things aren't on pedal boards, and a lot of them may never be on a pedal board. They're just cool to have and record and play this, one part or whatever. I Most of my pedal boards get built and they stay that way, and sometimes they don't stay that way because, oh, that's the best arrangement. It stays that way because I don't want to have to do it again.
Yeah.
I just want to play guitar.
Right.
So
Yeah.
whatever we can do to give us that guitar playing time back, I'm for it.
Exactly. Yeah, I know what you mean because I have the same thing when it comes to like sitting down to record a piece of music that I've come up with. Because it's like you plug in the guitar, you plug in the direct in, get the computer fired up and all this stuff, and you play with all these settings, and then an hour goes by and you're like, I don't even remember what I was gonna play. So I'm working
Right.
on getting a setup for myself where I can just sit down, plug in, and hit like a button and just go. Because I just want to play.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to play. That's all I want to do. Heck, half the time waiting for an amp to warm up is too much time delayed. Like
Yeah, yeah.
there was a part of me that I liked when I had my Helix set up. I just kept it was, and somebody's going to get mad at me and somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong, but you know what? It worked. I just left it on. I
Mhm.
never turned it off. I would just pick up guitar and it was on and ready to go, you know? And so that's what I did. Look, I've got a compute. I've got computers that ran for years between restarts. I think the Helix can stay on for a few evenings. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
essentially it's a
definitely.
computer. It's
Right.
a computer. It's not burning out tubes or anything.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
all the electronics people tell me that it's actually more taxing turning it on and off than it is just leaving it on. So
Yeah, because you have a
just leave
spike
it
in
on.
voltage. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So I think that that'll do really well. The for at least some crowd. I think we're finally. I think we're turning a corner in guitar world where maybe some of the traditionalist mentalities are fading a little bit, and people are
I
more
think so.
open to new ideas.
I think so. It's
And
slowly but
so,
surely. I think my favorite one so far though, I don't remember the guy's name, but he hit me up. He wanted pickups, and he was adamant about having cloth wire leads off of the pickup. And I asked, I was just to humor him. I was like, why? And it's like, well, that they sound the best because that's what they originally used. I was like, they sound the best. Like all they're doing is transferring current. They don't have a quote unquote sound. Like, what are you talking about? And needless to say, he didn't place an order because I didn't want to use that horrible cloth wire, and it's just a pain in the butt to work with. And it breaks
yeah,
down faster. It's actually an inferior wire if you really want to get into the discussion of what lead wire is best. But come on, like
yeah. And I say all of this as a traditionalist. I like classic design guitars. I like classic designed amps. I do. I like classic tones. Listeners of this podcast know I'm kind of a fuddy duddy in that. I've got tons of funky stuff, but I still end up going for amp, edge of breakup, overdrive pedal, reverb, and some trim, and that's it. That's what I want. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I want to play my blues and my Americana and country stuff, and I want to not deal with anything else. But I also check certain things at the door.
right,
Like, I don't care what wire connects my pickup to the pot, to the
yeah,
switch. I don't care as long as it is carrying the current and it works,
yep.
let's go.
Right. Well, like capacitors is another big one. So like you know what the old
Yeah.
Bumblebee capacitors are. So
Yeah.
recently, some genius decided that we're going to make a bunch of money selling overpriced Bumblebee capacitors that are vintage. And some guy X-rayed one, and it's just a standard, modern electrolytic capacitor that has a Bumblebee like wrapper around it. It's not even the same. Like you're paying 3 times as much money for like it. Current is current. So like quality of components matter, sure. If it's super
Yes,
cheap or
absolutely.
whatever, but it's funny to me when people insist on like vintage capacitors and things like that because
I,
especially
I
the old.
especially capacitors. Yeah, capacitors are the big one for me, especially oil filled capacitors. I'm like,
Yes.
you don't want old capacitors. You
No.
don't. You think you do. I listened to. I don't know if you listen to the Truth About Vintage Amps podcast
No,
that
I don't.
Fretboard
I'll have to
Journal
look them
puts
up.
out.
Hmm.
So yeah, so Jason Verlinde over at Fretboard Journal has Skip Simmons, and they take questions, they chat, a lot of food talk, lots of other stuff. It's a really fun podcast.
Hmm.
Listeners, if you're not familiar with the Truth About Vintage Amps, go over and listen to that podcast. I love it a whole bunch. Um, anyway, so Skip is an amp tech. Uh, He constantly refers to himself as a mechanic. He's like, I don't design amps, I don't build amps, I fix amps. That's what I do.
Right.
He had his run making, I think he still does a little bit of converting old PA heads into guitar amps, but
Oh,
that's about
okay.
as close as I think he got to, making his own amp. But he is constantly on about, and there's some people that tune into that show and ask questions that are super, they want it to be that OG thing, right?
Yeah.
And even Skip is very, like, the one thing he holds on to, he's like, you don't, if you understand current, you don't have to replace a 2-prong plug with a 3-prong. Like, he talks about that. He's like, if you
Yeah.
understand polarity, you don't have to do it. Like, just understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
Neither here nor there, but he talks about the guys who are like fixing these like original Tweed amps and stuff like that. And he's like, if you want, he said, one, you have to change the capacitors. He's like, if they go, they go. Don't try to save those things. Don't care, especially the filter caps. They're gonna go. In fact, I can't think of an original at this point Tweed amp that shouldn't just have the filter capacitors original change.
Yep.
I don't want you to sell me one of those amps that has the original filter caps at this point,
No,
because that's
no,
just
no,
something
no.
I'm gonna have to do. But he said, if you are dead set on the inside of this amp looking original, like if that's your thing, and he talked about that, he said, cut the wrapper, or you can actually cut that capacitor out and create a slip that goes over the new one to make it look like the old one. If you're
Uh,
that serious about it, he's like, but that's just for looks. He said, there's no
yeah.
function. You're not trying to sell, like in these cases, you're not trying to sell it to somebody as this thing that it's not.
Yeah.
You want it to look original for some strange reason. I want it to work. That's what I want things to do.
Yeah.
Um, I
Exactly.
I tell people all the time, my prime directive, my my Star Trek reference here, my prime goal with all of my gear, I do not own a piece of gear that I will not gig.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. If I have it, I'll gig it.
Right.
If I can't gig it, I probably don't need it.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not too interested in like vintage gear. I think it's cool. I was actually telling another friend of mine this actually just before we got started. He's gotten bitten by the vintage bug, and so he's like hunting down. Like right now, his goal is to own the entire Fender lineup from 1968 of
Interesting.
amps.
Okay. Oh, amps.
Yeah,
Okay.
he wants all the drip edge stuff. He wants all the drip edge stuff, right? Which is way more affordable than all the 68 guitars.
Yeah.
But he I I have a vintage amp. I have a Super Reverb from 1970, and I'll gig it. I
Yeah.
got the filter caps changed. Like, it's ready to go. It's
Yeah.
cleaned up and ready. But I've played a lot of vintage guitars. I've played a lot of vintage amps at this point. They're fun. They're cool. I respect the vibe.
Mm-hmm.
They don't play as well as the new stuff I have now.
Yeah.
I've played 6 bursts. 6. I counted them the other day. I've played 6 of the 1800 that were ever made. 58 to 60 Les Pauls. I
Mm-hmm.
played 6 original bursts. 2 of them I would play live.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 of them. Money aside, fear of them being stolen or broken aside, any of
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Yeah. But those 2 that I would play live, I've got multiple guitars behind me that play better.
Yeah.
Sound is a
Yeah.
whole other thing.
Yeah. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of vintage Gibsons. I really love, and my guitars are very Gibson inspired in a lot of ways. But
Yeah.
that 54, it was a 54 gold top that I played. No longer gold top. The my teacher who had it, he found it in a garbage bin outside after a gig. And somebody had they had like painted it black or something. They tried to take all the finish off, and so it's stained like a walnut brown now. But all original. The neck pickup in it wasn't working, so we had that remade. But the bridge pickup was original and just heavy as hell. Sounded great.
Yeah.
Kind of a bear to play, but it sounded amazing. but
Yeah.
but I agree with you. There's a lot of stuff out now that plays as good or better than the old stuff.
100%.
Yeah.
And At this point, it's just nostalgia and tradition and all those things holding on to it. I love the trash guitar stories. So there's a guy has an Instagram account called Fried Okra Guitar Lounge, or I need to get this right. I'm gonna get it right. Hold on. Let's open up Instagram while recording podcast. That's what I do. It could be worse. It could be Googling.
Could be
So
Googling.
yeah, it's fried okra. It's fried underscore okra, and he's a Mississippi guy. Um, he has got a ton of really cool vintage guitars. I've actually met him and talked to him. He's a super nice guy. We keep talking about doing something, and I going up there and doing some content with guitars, and I need to make that happen. I need to talk to him, but he's got an OG Flying V
Oh,
that he found in a landfill.
wow.
Literally found it in a landfill. And he
That's one
calls
of
it
the
landfill. That's just its name.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have to. Yeah. That's one of the few like vintage guitars I haven't played. So like I've played, I forget what year it is. I've played a vintage SG. I've played several vintage
Mm-hmm.
Tellys, Les Paul, Strat, a 335 from like '76, I think,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a couple acoustics like that Martin D28. But they're all
Right.
fun. But when you play them and then you go and you play stuff today, it's like I like the newer stuff better. I
Yeah.
the old stuff has that vibe to it, but also they're like often whoever their quality control guy was at say Gibson or whoever it was that day, it was wildly different. So like some guitars were gems and some guitars were just duds.
Yeah. I think the term is Friday guitars. They're the
mm.
guitars that were finished on Fridays,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
people are, so people already had their head on the weekend, and
Yep.
some things some things went out the door that shouldn't have gone out the door.
Right.
And that's every field. I'm not
Oh
picking at
yeah.
these companies at all, honestly, but it's I I I get it, and I love the vibe. I just recently traded off a 2019 Les Paul that I bought after Henry was out at Gibson and JC came in, and they made all the changes to make the standard back to a Les Paul standard. No dip
Mhm.
switches, no crazy finishes. They dropped the price. I bought that guitar and I loved that guitar. A little heavy, but I loved that guitar. Um, and I've played 3 bursts since I got that guitar, and not one of them played better.
Mm.
Not one of them. And because vintage guitars are quirky,
Yeah.
they've aged. They've got weird things about them. They don't set up as easily.
Right.
They've weathered into whatever they're going to be,
Mhm.
and that means they're a little tougher to deal with, and are tougher to um, get action where you want it. Probably been refretted multiple times. If they're a good one, they've been
Right.
refretted multiple times, and so I'd just as soon buy something new. And I think
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
things like the uh, Murphy Lab are so popular,
Mm.
because you get
Mhm.
the vibe, but you get new. You get
Yeah.
something that's, I don't know.
Yeah, and like you said with the vintage ones, playability is a big problem with a lot of them.
Yeah,
And for me, my perspective, like as a musician, not as a guitar maker, is the best sounding guitar is the one that plays the best.
there you go.
And and then having good pickups and woods or whatever else on top of that is just a bonus on top of that. But if you can have the best sounding guitar in the world, but if the action is 3 inches off the fretboard, unless
Doesn't matter.
unless you're Robert Randolph and can play a mean slide, then the rest of us can't make it happen. But
Right.
so playability is really important, and tuning too. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a guitar store and picked a guitar off the wall and it wasn't intonated properly. Simple things like
Yeah.
that.
That drives me crazy. I've got a couple of guitars I need to do some intonation work on, because they I don't know if they've drifted, or I'm maybe using a different gauge string than they were originally intonated with, because
Mhm.
I'd go up a little bit. So I've got some that I need to, but it's like shops, start intonating your guitars before they go on the wall,
Yeah.
because when they're in tune, they're not in tune. They're only in tune for the open strings, and then everything else sounds horrible.
Yeah.
That drives me crazy. Listen, guitar's already out of tune. If you listen to my episode with Jesse from Honig, Jesse Honig from 29 Pedals, look, guitar's already out of tune. It just is. Don't make it worse.
Right.
So it's neither here nor there. But I tell you what, we're coming up to the end of the regular episode. Brady, thank you for coming on. We're gonna keep talking. We're gonna hang out and do some Patreon content and record an episode for supporters over there. I do want to thank all of my Patreon supporters. You make this show happen. Remember that if you are not a Patreon supporter and you want to be one or help keep this show on the road, you can go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast and you can keep the show going like these fine people. Tom Kelly, Scott Hamilton from the Effects Loop podcast, Rick Calhoun from Honey Picks, Kyle Harris, Kyle Benton, Jim Burns, Jeffrey Walks, David Ishizaka from the Timber Owls, and Annie Koenig, who are all at a $5 level. And at the $10 high wattage level, want to thank Heath Batt, Dan Pilver from Lewitt Microphones, and Ben Fair from Electromotive Sound Company. Thank you all so much for your support, for keeping this show going. It is greatly appreciated, and it keeps me from going in debt for doing this. And that means a whole bunch. I think I finally, with the addition of a couple of new Patreons, I am breaking even every month now for my overhead costs. So that is fantastic. Well, Brady, thank you again. We're going to go over to Patreon and talk about. I've got a couple of things I want to talk to you about. So we're going to talk.
Okay.
We're going to talk over there about guitar design and some custom style stuff. And I need to talk about Telecaster pickups. We're going to come back to Telecaster pickups. So
all right, sounds good. Well, thanks for having me, and see you in the Patreon episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So listeners, until next time, remember: be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.